Alonzo Brooks. Not necessarily creepy in the traditional sense, though it has a long history and is literally close to home. The reboot of Unsolved Mysteries featured an episode about his disappearance because of it. After his death, initially being ruled undetermined, he was exhumed, and it was changed to murder, which was always pretty obvious. He went to a party in a small Kansas town, Racine, with a few friends. Alonzo had some words with partygoers. His friends bailed. Alonzo doesn't come home. The next day, his shoes are found down the road, separately. Police searched the area, including along a creek near the party house. Nothing. A few weeks later, the police let the family do a search, after not letting them be involved earlier. His body is almost immediately found along that same creek. Of note, though, is that his body didn't show any signs of deterioration or decomposition that would be expected of having been there for weeks. It's presumed he was in a fight at the party, dragged down the road, and possibly inadvertently killed in a shed near the party house that was tore down shortly after. The other fucked up part is that it suggested his body was kept in a meat locker and covered up by the cops. And when the family tried to get more involved in the search, his body was dumped along the creek, thereby explaining the lack of decomposition. The party had some 100 people there. Someone knows something, and no one is saying anything. Went to a good-sized college party with several friends. The location for the party was out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. The road leading to the party was fairly straight with one major feature. The road was flat for the entire length, but it had a hill that was 30-ish feet tall halfway down it. A pretty good bump in the road, you might say. I was driving, and when I slowly topped the hill, I met a car heading in the opposite direction. That car slowed down to a stop. It was several of my friends temporarily leaving the party to make a beer run. They all knew who I was by my vehicle and flagged me down to ask if I needed anything from town, and we proceeded to chat for a minute about how the party was unfolding. When we both backed up to talk, we just happened to stop at the top of the hill. Mind you, this was not a busy road and located, as we say, out in the sticks. As we were parked, talking for a brief minute, we all noticed there was a song coming from the surrounding woods. We figured it was somebody having a private party in a parked car nearby in the woods, if you get my drift. The odd thing was, it was Turn the Page by Bob Seger, but it was on repeat. We all went on to meet back up and attend the party and thought nothing more of our chat on the hill. A few days later, I got a visit from several police officers about an investigation. They learned there was a party that night down the road with the hill in question. They were tracking down all attendees. That is how they found me. A hunter, the day after the party, found something at the base of the hill off the road. Someone driving another car that night, heading in the same direction down the road I was on, had wrecked their vehicle. The driver took the hill at an insane speed and unalived themselves in a wreck that had ran way off the road. Unsolved mystery that is still ongoing. The police said that they believe the driver they found was not the driver. There were two people in the car who wrecked. They found one set of bloody footprints that led to the top of the hill. It looked like someone moved the body behind the steering wheel and fled on foot. They found extra sets of bloody handprints in the car. The wild thing was that they found a CD with Bob Seger, turned the page in the CD player. Everyone that was on top of the hill that night volunteered to give fingerprints. Every so often, every few years, one of us gets a phone call to ask us to recount what we saw that night on top of the hill. On Thursday, December 12th, 1985, a toddler was spotted wandering unaccompanied around a Kmart department store in Spanaway, Washington, with no parent or guardian in sight. When authorities tried to coax information out of her to help locate her parents, the only piece of information she was able to give was, "Mommy is in the trees." A photo was placed in the local newspaper, and the toddler was soon recognized as Crystal by her maternal grandmother, Louise Conrad, who took her into her care, later saying that Crystal appeared shaken and disturbed, perhaps by something she'd seen. So, where was Mommy? About 2 months later, the body of Diana Robertson, Crystal's mommy, was discovered deep in the forest around Elbe, Washington, with 17 stab wounds and a tube stock tied around her neck. Nearby, an abandoned 1982 Plymouth pickup truck was discovered covered in bloodstains, with a handwritten note on the dash simply saying, "I love you, Diana." This truck belonged to her partner, Mike Reamer, an outdoorsman and trapper who often spent time in these woods. Mike, however, was nowhere to be found. Initially, the police believed him to be responsible for Diana's murder. Just 2 months prior, on October 19th, 1985, Mike had been arrested and cited for domestic assault and malicious damage after allegedly kicking in a door at her apartment, throwing her to the floor, and rubbing her face in the carpet. They also connected her murder to a double murder that occurred in the same woods 4 months earlier. A man named Stephen Harkins was found shot to death in his sleeping bag, while his companion, Ruth Cooper, was found strangled 2 months later. Both had a tube sock tied around their neck. So, was Mike a serial killer? He had apparently been in the woods at the very same time that Harkins and Cooper were murdered, and certainly knew how to navigate the tricky terrain. But with no trace of him, there was no way to tell for certain. Over 20 years later, on March 26, 2011, a hiker discovered a partial human skull in the woods off of State Route 7 in Lewis County near Mineral, Washington, about a mile from where Diana's body had been found. Subsequent analysis revealed that it was indeed Mike, and that he was likely a homicide victim himself. So 4 murders in the same woods by an unknown assailant. The question remains, how did Crystal find herself wandering around the Kmart over 30 miles away? She must have been driven there and dropped off, presumably by the serial killer. Crystal must have spent a silent 45-minute drive in the car with that very person who killed her parents, with no memory of the event.